Have you ever been the last person to leave the office? That feeling when the familiar hum of computers and chatter fades away, replaced by a profound, almost heavy silence. It's a quiet that feels different from the peace of your own home. This is an artificial quiet. A space designed for noise and people is suddenly empty, and every creak of the building, every distant siren seems amplified tenfold. It's in these moments that the mind starts to play tricks. The shadows in the corner of your eye seem to shift and stretch. A mundane object, like a coat hanging on a rack, can suddenly look like a person standing perfectly still, watching you from the periphery. It's an unnerving transformation of the known into the unknown. Tonight, the rain is coming down hard against the windows. Relentless drumming that only makes the silence inside feel deeper. It's the kind of weather that makes you want to be safely at home, not stuck in a vacant building where every drip and gust of wind sounds like a footstep. The rain becomes a soundtrack to your unease. It distorts the world outside, turning familiar streetlights into blurry, wavering orbs. The rhythmic patter is almost hypnotic, lulling you into a state of heightened awareness where your senses are on high alert. You start to question every little sound. Was that just the wind, or was it something else? Something closer. Something closer. This is the perfect setting for stories that blur the line between the rational and the terrifying. These aren't tales of distant, haunted castles or ancient curses. They are stories from everyday people and everyday jobs. Librarians, security guards, janitors. People who, for one reason or another, found themselves completely alone in the dead of night with only the sound of the rain for company. Their workplaces, so normal and mundane by day, became stages for events they still can't fully explain. These are the moments that stick with you, long after the shift ends and the sun comes up. So, as the storm rages on outside, let's dim the lights and lean in a little closer. We're going to explore 3 such stories, each one a chilling reminder of how vulnerable we can feel when we're isolated. These accounts come from people who just wanted to finish their work and go home, but ended up with a story that would haunt their quiet moments for years to come. They are a testament to that primal fear of being alone in the dark. A fear that is buried deep within all of us. Let's begin with a librarian who discovered she wasn't the only one browsing the stacks after hours. Our first story comes from a woman named Clara, who worked as a librarian at a small, historic town library. One Tuesday night, she was tasked with cataloging a new donation of very old books. A job that required her to stay several hours after the library had closed to the public. The rain had started just as she locked the main doors, a gentle pitter-patter that soon grew into a heavy downpour. The old library was a maze of towering shelves and narrow aisles, and the sound of the rain echoed strangely through the vast, empty space. She was completely alone, or so she thought. She settled into her work at a large oak desk in the main reading room. About an hour into her work, she heard a faint sound from the history section on the second floor. It was a soft, rhythmic thud. 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 At first, she dismissed it as the old building settling, or perhaps a branch hitting the roof and the roof kind of group entering the roof bend of the wind. But the sound was too regular, too deliberate. It sounded exactly like a book being dropped flat onto a carpeted floor, over and over again. Her heart began to pound a little faster. She called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" Her voice was swallowed by the immense quiet, answered only by the drumming of the rain and that persistent soft thud from upstairs. Gathering her courage, Clara grabbed a heavy flashlight and made her way toward the grand staircase. The wooden steps creaked under her weight, each sound making her flinch. As she ascended, the thudding sound stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was somehow even more terrifying. She reached the second floor and scanned the aisles with her flashlight beam. Everything was in its place. The rows of books stood silent and still. She walked slowly through the history section, her light cutting through the darkness, revealing nothing out of the ordinary. She felt a small wave of relief, convincing herself it must have been the storm. Just as she was about to turn back, she saw it. At the very end of a narrow aisle, lying flat on the floor, was a single large leather-bound book. She didn't recognize it as one she had shelved. Hesitantly, she walked over and picked it up. Its title was Local Obituaries 1880 to 1920. A cold shiver ran down her spine as she opened it to a random page. There. A name was circled in what looked like fresh red ink. Clara. She dropped the book, the sound of it hitting the carpet a sickeningly familiar thud, and ran without looking back. She never stayed late at the library again. Our next story takes us to a modern, sprawling tech campus on the outskirts of a major city. James was a new security guard, and he had drawn the graveyard shift. His job was simple: patrol the 3 main buildings, ensure all doors were locked, and watch the monitors. It was a lonely gig, made even more so by the relentless rain that had been falling since dusk. The campus, usually buzzing with thousands of employees, was now a ghost town of dark glass and steel. James was making his first round of the night in Building C, the oldest on the campus, his footsteps echoing on the polished concrete floors. As he walked down a long, sterile corridor lined with empty cubicles, he heard a sound over his walkie-talkie. It wasn't the usual static or a call from the main gate. It was music, a faint, tinny melody that sounded like it was coming from an old-fashioned music box. He stopped, listening intently. The music was gentle, almost childlike, a stark contrast to the sterile corporate environment. He checked his walkie-talkie, but it was silent. The music seemed to be coming from somewhere down the hall, near the marketing department's conference room. He cautiously approached the conference room, the music growing slightly louder. The door was made of frosted glass, and he could see a silhouette inside. It was small, like a child sitting on the large conference table. James's blood ran cold. No one, absolutely no one was supposed to be in the building. His protocol was to call for backup immediately, but he was frozen in place, staring at the small, unmoving shape. The rain lashed against the windows, and a flash of lightning briefly illuminated the hallway, making the silhouette stark and clear for a terrifying second. Taking a deep breath, James unholstered his flashlight and pushed open the door. Security. "Who's in here? Who's in here?" he yelled, his voice shaking. The room was empty. The large mahogany table was bare. The music had stopped. He swept his light across every corner of the room, checking under the table and behind the curtains. There was nothing. No sign of entry. No wet footprints. Nothing to explain the silhouette or the music. He backed out of the room slowly, his eyes darting around the empty corridor. For the rest of his shift, he stayed in the main security office, his eyes glued to the monitors, refusing to patrol Building C again until sunrise. Our final story comes from a man named Marcus, a janitor who cleaned a downtown medical clinic after hours. The clinic was a place of healing by day, but at night, it took on a different feel. The sterile smell of antiseptic, the empty patient rooms, and the long, quiet hallways could be deeply unsettling. On one particularly stormy Friday night, Marcus was working on the 3rd floor, which housed the pediatric wing. The rain was so heavy it sounded like a constant roar, and the wind howled around the corners of the building. He was mopping the floor near the nurse's station, his headphones on, trying to drown out the storm. Suddenly, he felt a light tug on the back of his coveralls. He paused, pulling off his headphones. He turned around, expecting to see that he had snagged his clothing on a doorknob or a piece of furniture. But there was nothing there, just the long, empty hallway stretching out behind him, dimly lit by the emergency lights. He shrugged it off as his imagination put his headphones back on and continued mopping. A few minutes later, it happened again. This time, it was a more distinct pull, like a small child trying to get his attention. He spun around faster this time, his heart.
Always slowed it forward, and I swung up in.
He spun around faster this time, his heart thumping. The hallway was still empty. Now genuinely spooked, Marcus took off his headphones and decided to work in total silence. He moved his cleaning cart down the hall toward the last examination room. As he pushed the mop bucket, he noticed something on the freshly cleaned floor behind him. A set of tiny, wet footprints. They were impossibly small, like those of a toddler, and they led from the middle of the hallway to the wall, where they simply stopped. Marcus stared, his mind refusing to process what he was seeing. He hadn't seen anyone, and there was no open door or wet patch on the ceiling where water could have dripped. The prints looked fresh, as if someone had just walked there. He followed them with his eyes, back and forth, from the middle of the hall to the solid wall. He felt a cold draft, and the hair on his arms stood on end. He could almost feel a presence in the room, a silent observer in the shadows. He didn't wait to find out what it was. He abandoned his cart, grabbed his personal belongings from the janitor's closet, and clocked out an hour early, telling his supervisor the next day that he was sick. He requested a transfer to a different building and never set foot in that clinic after dark again. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time. When I was in college, I worked part-time for my parents, covering the graveyard shift at their 24/7 laundromat. It was this old, slightly run-down place tucked into the edge of a sleepy town. Most nights were slow, quiet, just the steady hum of washers and dryers and the occasional local who came in late. And while that may sound peaceful, there was always something a little off about the place. The age of the building, the flickering fluorescent lights, and that never-ending machine drone. It just gave the place this eerie undertone, especially when you were the only one inside. Every Friday night from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., the place was mine. My dad would leave me some snacks in the back room and remind me to call if I needed anything. I liked having the freedom, until one Friday changed everything. It started like any other shift. A few customers trickled in during the first hour. I handled things behind the counter, scrolled on my phone, cleaned a little. Business as usual. Around midnight, the place was empty. No more customers, no more loads. I was about to start cleaning when I heard the door chime. Someone walked in. He didn't have laundry with him, nothing in his hands. Just a black hoodie pulled over his head and both hands buried deep in the pockets. "Hey," I said casually. He didn't respond, didn't even glance at me. He just wandered slowly down the aisles, looking around like he was browsing clothes. In a laundromat. Then, just as silently, he walked back out the door and disappeared into the night. I watched him as he left, He didn't get into a car, didn't head toward any nearby buildings. He just walked across the street and faded out of view. It was weird, yeah, but he didn't do anything, just walked around. I chalked it up to someone looking for a lost sock or something. I shook it off and got back to cleaning. The thought of that guy lingered in the back of my head, but I tried to ignore it. Maybe 20 minutes later, I glanced up and froze. He was back. Only this time he wasn't inside. He was standing right outside the glass door, staring in. I almost didn't notice him. He blended into the night, all in black. And by the time my eyes locked on him, he turned and walked away. No idea how long he had been standing there. I rushed to the door and looked out. But he was gone, just vanished. Something about him being back, silently watching me, it chilled me. I thought about calling my dad, but I didn't want to seem paranoid. I wanted to prove I could handle the shift, so I stayed. About an hour passed. No more signs of the man, no customers. Just me and the machines. I let myself relax, started scrolling on my phone again. Then I heard something. A soft creak. It came from the back of the laundromat, somewhere near the storage room. I paused, held my breath, and listened. There it was again, faint shuffling, like someone moving boxes or rummaging through supplies. I stepped toward the back, every hair on my body standing on end. I stopped in the hallway, heart pounding, trying to decide what to do. That's when I made my choice. I was going to leave, call the police from outside and wait. But when I got to the front door and pushed, it didn't open. It was jammed. I looked down through the glass. Something was wrapped around the outside handles, like rope or wire. That man. He had done something to the door. Panic kicked in hard. I turned back, trying not to make a sound. I crept toward the back room, still hearing the soft rustle of someone inside. As I peeked in, there he was. He had his back turned, crouched down, going through boxes. And just behind him, the back exit. I had one chance. I bolted. The man spun around as I sprinted for the door. I saw his eyes just before I hit the handle, wild, furious. The door didn't open at first. Something was tied around it too. But whatever he had done, it wasn't secure. I pulled harder. The knot gave. I was out. The cold air hit my face as I ran into the parking lot, gasping. The man burst out behind me, but he didn't chase me. Instead, he turned and ran off into the night. I called my dad, and then the police. They searched the area, but he was gone. There were no fingerprints, no ID, nothing left behind. Whatever that man wanted, it wasn't laundry. Looking back, the way he moved, the way he scoped out the place, the way he tried to trap me inside, it all adds up to something sinister. If I hadn't run when I did, if he hadn't managed to secure that back door, I don't even want to imagine how it could have ended. Now, every time I work alone, I double-check every exit, every corner, because I learned the hard way. Just because someone looks harmless doesn't mean they are. I worked the graveyard shift at a shipping warehouse. Big space, lots of shelves, and even more silence. It's just me, the inventory, and the echo of my own footsteps. Occasionally there's a co-worker or two, but most nights, I'm completely alone. This night started out just like the others. I clocked in, exchanged a quick all clear with my manager, and watched him lock up before heading out. I dove into the usual routine. Inventory counts, shipment checks, organizing. It's a dull rhythm, but I don't mind it. I've always liked the quiet. It's peaceful. But that peace didn't last. About an hour in, I passed one of the side doors near the back of the building, the kind truckers use. It wasn't wide open, just cracked. hanging barely off the latch like someone forgot to pull it shut all the way. I peeked out. Empty lot. Empty lot. No vehicles. No people. Just stillness under the sodium orange lights. I figured my manager forgot to lock it. I couldn't do much about it. I don't have keys for those doors. But I shrugged it off, shut it and moved on. Didn't seem like a big deal. But maybe that was the first mistake. I was cruising through inventory, moving faster than usual. Focused. Efficient. That's when I saw it. Or thought I saw it. At the very edge of my vision, something moved. A quick dart across the hallway at the far end of the shelves, like someone sprinting from one side to the other. I stopped, looked up. Nothing. You know those moments when your brain tries to convince you it was just a trick of the eye? That's what I told myself. Probably nothing. Maybe the shadow of a flickering light or just fatigue messing with me. Still, my heart skipped a beat. I stayed put for a minute, staring down that long, dim hallway. Should I go check? Nah, probably nothing. Just shadows playing games again. But that little flicker of unease, it didn't go away. 10 minutes passed, maybe less. But I couldn't shake it, the feeling that someone had actually been there. So I gave in. I walked down the hallway, heading to the section I usually never enter. It's where the large shipping pallets sit, fully packed and prepped to go out. It's not part of my job, and most of the lights back there stay off. I stood at the edge of that darkness, looking in. Nothing moved. Silence. I waited, hoping for some sign that it was just my imagination, but nothing happened. So I turned and went back. But the second I returned to my aisle, something felt off. I suddenly felt heavy, like exhaustion hit me out of nowhere. My motivation disappeared. I tried to shake it off and keep working, telling myself I'd earn a break after this section. Then it happened again. This time it was unmistakable. From the corner of my eye, I saw it again. Something leaning out from behind the shelves at the end of the hallway. Not moving this time. Just there, watching. I whipped my head around, but the figure was gone. This time, I didn't hesitate. I dropped everything and stormed toward the hallway, heart pounding in my chest. I called out, "Hello?" Silence. I stepped into the shipping area. Every footstep echoed, bouncing off the cold concrete and metal shelving. I stopped halfway through the room and listened. Dead quiet. But I knew I was being watched. I could feel it, like eyes boring into the back of my skull. I spun around but saw nothing. That made it worse. I turned and rushed back to the main aisle. And that's when the noise hit. Thud. Loud. Metallic. Like someone had smashed something against the shelving. I froze. Thud. Again. But softer this time. Like tapping. Tap. 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 Deliberate. Measured. Like it was trying to draw me back in. I didn't wait. I bolted. Straight for the back door. Into the parking lot. I didn't stop running until I hit the far end of the lot and turned around to make sure nothing followed me. That's when I called the police. I didn't expect them to find anything. Maybe some raccoon or a pipe shifting from temperature changes. That's what I hoped. But what they found proved I was never alone. The officers swept through the warehouse, and there he was. A man, crouched behind one of the shelves in the dark pallet room. Late 40s. Filthy, greasy hair. Blank stare. He didn't fight. Didn't speak. Just let them take him away. And here's where things got worse. When they reviewed the security footage, they found that he had been around the building multiple nights in a row. Checking doors. Wandering around the property. Circling the warehouse like a vulture. All those nights, I'd been inside, working, alone. sometimes just feet away from him, separated only by a thin metal door he was testing. I don't know what he wanted. He never said. But the tapping? That wasn't random. That was a man trying to get my attention, trying to lure me into the dark. I don't work night shifts anymore, and I double-check every door now, because sometimes it's not your imagination. Sometimes someone is watching. With that said, thanks for watching. And until next time,